Okay, good. Um, Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Don't know where you are, but if you're in South Africa, it's good evening. And I'm able to make this video because load shedding is a thing of the past for now. So after eating a generous lunch, well, I'll call it dinner, I can have some lemon tea, and it's not rooibos. This is proper tea. And I wanted to talk to you, South Africans, about getting out of the bubble and taking off your blinkers to find other places around the world to be able to study. Okay, to be able to study because in South Africa you could pay up to 500,000 rands, for example. Actually, it's 40,000 rands a year on average at any university for an average career. And if you want to study medicine, which is what we'll talk about in this video, then you would be paying up to maybe 500,000. It's not a cheap thing. And also in South Africa, you are subject to university entrance and points and all that other rubbish. In other words, in South Africa, they try very hard not to give you the ability to enjoy, to have the privilege or the ability to study at university and have the privilege that is studying at university. So I want to be talking about studying specifically abroad in Argentina. And I'm also making this video because Argentina has just won the World Cup. And what happened was one of the newspapers in New York decided to take a bit of a cheap shot at Argentina and asked them why their soccer team is all white and there are no black people representing Argentina. And then, of course, they dug into Argentinian history, which shows a clear genocide of black people. Now, I'm not here to badmouth Argentina. I'm making this video for two reasons: to tell you the truth about Argentina, and also to tell you why it's such a fantastic place to study anything, really, and especially medicine. So I'm not here to kick, slap, and badmouth Argentinians. That's not my area of expertise. But I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to break down the society for you to understand what you'll be getting yourself into if you go to Argentina as a student or a tourist. Okay? One more sip and we're going to get started. I put a juice of a whole lemon in my tea, so if my eyes get bigger, that's just the lemon. Now, what happens is people go to Argentina for two reasons, okay? First, before I explain the reasons, black people don't just go to Argentina unless they are being forced by some funny organization to go and sell merchandise on the streets, okay? I can't prove this, but that's the talk on the ground in Argentina, that cartels bring people to sell merchandise on the streets of Argentina. As to how true that is, I don't know. But that's the talk on the ground. It's been the talk for the last decade. And the point of me mentioning this is that black people don't just wake up in the morning and say, hey, you want to go to Maradona land? I want to go to Argentina. It doesn't happen like that. There's a reason why people go to Argentina specifically. In my case, Argentina was never even in my plans for the future. Never dreamt of it, never cared for it. I knew it existed, and I've also heard the Evita. When I always heard the Evita, I wondered what it is about Argentina that makes it so wonderful. And also, when I started growing up and hearing about the Falklands War and understanding what was happening in the 1980s, that's when I sort of started to research what this country is all about, because I just knew the Evita like everybody else. I knew it was on the map, but I couldn't care less what's in there. It's not until I decided in 2009, when I was working for a company in Randburg, which gave me a secure job with pension and all these other things. But after a while, I realized that I was just rotting in the office. I'm a creative person. I like to explore. I didn't want to be kept in one place. Also, the company had promised to take me to school, either to study accountancy or banking, but that never came through. And I was always looking for, excuse me, an opportunity to carry on improving myself. So while working for this company, I learned Spanish, and I had an interest, which came from a religious side of things, to become a what's called a missionary pilot and go to the Amazon and do medical evacuations. That was the plan. So I learned Spanish, I studied Spanish, I did my research, etc., so that my adventure would have some sort of foundation. Long story short, in 2011, actually last day of 2010, I got on an airplane and I went to South America. And I went specifically to the Republic of Guyana, okay, which is formerly called British Guyana. It's the only English-speaking nation in South America. So, anyways, I went to Guyana and I did my thing. I'll talk about Guyana in another video, but I'm just trying to lay the foundation for you so that you can connect the dots later. So I went to Guyana and I did my thing, and part of my thing was going to mining towns in the dense jungle in the northern Amazon. So Guyana begins in the northern Amazon and ends on the Caribbean sea coast. Okay. So I was deep in the jungle, going from town to mining sites. And I was carrying with me my first aid kit because I had first aid training through St. John. And I went with my kit and see how I could help people. Basically, these mining towns were like hundreds of kilometers or days away from the nearest medical facility, of which there are not many in the jungle. So I would go there with a friend who took me there, who thought it'd be good for the people for me to go there. And I found people with different kinds of wounds, okay? And one that I want to share is this one guy. He was a young guy amongst a group of gold miners and diamond miners. Tea. Before it gets cold, it's good. And he took me amongst the diamond miners and gold miners. And in this group, specific group, there was a young man, maybe 18, 19 years of age. And because he was the youngest, all the older men made him the cook. So he was cooking for them. And when I got there the night before, he was boiling fish or something in hot oil and potatoes. And the recipient that he was using to boil, I believe it tilted and he tried to rescue it with his hands, and he got both his hands into deep hot oil and he had third-degree burns. Now I want you to imagine the situation. This guy's in the jungle. There's bacteria everywhere. This is hot and humid and stinky kind of place. And if you have an open wound, good luck to you. So this guy, by the time I found him, it was the first morning after the accident, and his hands were in three colors: a creamish color, red, and pink. But when I smelled his hands, there was no gangrene, so I couldn't smell anything. So I got out the dressings and I started washing his wound, cleaning his wound, and I dressed his wound. Okay, and I showed him how he can change the dressing with the passing of time throughout the time that he would spend in the jungle. I left him a lot of my bandages, which were in the kit. Maybe I left him with a week's worth of bandages, enough to get the skin and the wounds to start to close a little bit and scab to form. I left him with ointments, all of that stuff. When we left that place, I went back to my friend's house where I was staying for the weekend, and I just had this different feeling. Okay, so my focus then was aviation. Okay, I learned how to fly small airplanes at Lanseria Airport, at what's it called, at the Wits Flying Club. So going to Guyana, it was under the auspices of an American NGO that did the job there. So after helping this guy, in my mind and my heart, I started moving away from from aviation because of the politics inside this NGO, and the people were just funny. So I started focusing on the Guyanese people and less on the organization. And me going to the gold mine or the diamond mine is me focusing on the Guyanese people whom I had come to serve. So anyway, long story short, I had this feeling afterwards that I have more to give to people than what I think. So initially, I thought about nursing, that maybe I'll be a pilot and I'll be a nurse. But then I saw what I did to that guy's wounds the other day, and I said, I should dig deeper. Okay. And so in my mind, I just had to educate myself. I just had to educate myself. I couldn't do it in South Africa because I didn't have the university entrance, even though I've got the aptitude. For me, high school was a complete waste of time. High school for me was learning language and people skills. I didn't learn anything in particular. And I had the privilege to play cricket, which was my favorite sport. But if you talk about academics, I really didn't get high school. High school went over my head. Okay. But I did have the aptitude. So this is now 9 years, 10 years after I left high school. I'm quitting my job in Johannesburg. I'm going to a country I don't know anything about to try and educate myself and have an adventure and see what I'm really capable of as a human being. And I'm glad I pushed myself to do that, to go to become uncomfortable in a country not mine. So while I'm sitting in Guyana, tea. So while I'm sitting in Guyana, in the clubhouse, well, not the clubhouse, in the base of this NGO, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and I'm like, I need to go study something. I could go back to South Africa and redo my matric and try and get certain subjects like mathematics and science and biology. Well, I actually have biology. It was mathematics and science, chemistry that I did not do. I was advised to drop maths by a teacher in high school. I was good at science, and I could not do science without mathematics. So the education system did not allow me to do physics without maths. So I had to drop physics, which I was good at, sort of. And I carried on with biology and some other useless subjects. Okay. But I'm glad I did biology because I did very well in biology, actually, at the end, especially at the end of my high school career. So the biological sphere or biology, natural science, that's specifically natural science, has always been a thing that I did perceive and understand. Okay. So that was my option to come back home and do my matric. But I didn't want to be home because my projects and my ambitions were in South America. South Africa was behind me. So I was sitting there in Georgetown, in the capital of Guyana, where the base was for the NGO, and I was sitting there and I was twiddling my thumbs, thinking, where can I study? So I started to pray about it. And I said to God, I need to study something, but I don't know where. My options are Brazil, Chile, Argentina, which I knew nothing about. It became an option. So I sent applications for university entrance in all of these countries, different universities. And I said to God, whichever one accepts me first, I will go there. All right. So as I'm working with this NGO and living in Guyana, during this time, I was still a Christian. I was still a Seventh-day Adventist. And so the university in Argentina was Seventh-day Adventist, and they allowed me to come and study. So initially, I wanted to study nursing, but before you study anything, they make you to do a Spanish program. They call it CLAIR. But you see, I didn't need to do CLAIR because I had taught myself Spanish in 2019, and I was pretty good at it. So they made me go through the CLAIR program at the university because they wanted money. You see, for them, it's money to have students go through the language class, whether they can speak or not, so that they can make a buck. So they did make a buck out of me, $2,000 to be exact. But I won't complain because at the end, I kicked butt in that class and I was able to get myself a certificate with amazing grades. And that's the key to the work that I do today. But I want to talk about what the jobs I do in another video. So I went to Argentina and I started studying. So I went through typically the first 6 months. I went through the Spanish program, and then afterwards I started exploring what else I could study. Now, this is what I want you to understand at this point, that I came from South Africa with a matric certificate without university entrance, and I was accepted in a foreign university, and I could study in a foreign university. So after I studied Spanish, I did a semester of English and translation. After a while, I was so good at both languages that I thought this is a waste of time. I started exploring nursing because of my experience where in Guyana. I was determined to be able to help people at that medical level. So I studied a year of nursing in Argentina without university entrance, okay, without the points. But just because I'd finished high school, I could go to university. There was nothing stopping me from going to university. Whereas in South Africa, you have a lot of hoops that were established in the colonial era to stop people like me and you from going into university. Okay, besides money. All right, money's a given, but all these other qualifications and whatever that you need in order to go into university, they're really meaningless. Okay, I didn't do maths in high school. I can do a bit of maths now. I actually have a textbook every day or every week. I try to do a maths problem. I'm not good at it, but I'm also doing coding, which is IT. And they said I needed maths for that, but I'm doing coding just fine at the moment. I'm not great at it, but I don't need maths for it. So what I'm trying to say, all these prerequisites, I beg your pardon, and all these hoops that they put for us in high school in the education system in South Africa mean absolutely nothing. But if you choose to stay in South Africa, you'll always have limitations. Okay. So Argentina, I discovered it by accident. So two things. Black people, Africans go to Argentina. One is tourists. Number two, to go and study. I don't know many black tourists, South Africans that go there. I know people who do business there. But mostly we all go to Argentina to study, because in Argentina you can study anything you want, absolutely anything you want, free of charge. Okay, you can study anything you want in Argentina, free of charge. The only requirement for you to enter university is your matric certificate and a letter from the Department of Education in Pretoria proving and stating that you have completed basic education, primary school and high school. Okay, so I have a document with the relevant email addresses for you to obtain those documents. So if you email me, I might be able to email it to you, and you can source your own documents. So with just my matric certificate, obviously translated into Spanish and apostilled, I was able to get into school and start studying. That Adventist University didn't last too long. I didn't like it at the end. I didn't like the religion. I didn't like the people. I didn't like the university because it was the complete opposite of what they profess. And I never really felt at home in that religion either. I like the Bible. I like Judaism, and that's where I am. But I'm not selling Judaism here. I'm telling you the reason why I left that university. And I'm glad I did, because Argentina is a massive country. It's a huge country, many provinces, and each province has many universities. Okay. Argentina is probably the study capital of the world. I don't know if anyone has ever done that research or put together those stats. There's a university and a college everywhere in Argentina, and they all have an open policy, even the private universities. Okay. So I decided to leave the Adventist University, and I left for the public university, which was next door. So next door is 2 hours away from the village that I used to live. And I used to live in the same village that had the university that I used to go to, or that one I went to first, the Adventist University. But now I was going to a government university in a province called Santa Fe. Getting into the university was not easy, because this university was exclusively for the top students in the country. So you have to write an entry exam. Okay. So I don't have a physics background, because at school they told me I should drop physics. I didn't have a chemistry background because I never had a chance to study chemistry. So when I left this university, I had to take a year off and start studying from scratch what chemistry is, start studying the basic laws of physics and whatever else. And uh, during that time, I also had to come back home. Or was it when did I come back home? So I decided because that university was what's reachable. The one I really wanted was 4 hours away. Okay, so in Argentina you have options. The one I wrote the entry exam into is 2 hours away. The one I really wanted is 4 hours away by bus. So I decided to go to the one that's 4 hours away for one reason. Getting in is easy. You don't have to write an exam. You show up, you show your document, you present your documents, you start studying. You have two options in Argentina to study. You can study under what's called libre, which means you are a student at the university, but you don't go to class. You write exams and you do pracs in your own time. And then there's what's called alumno regular, which means you are a student that has a timetable and you attend all your classes, a minimum 70% attendance for you to pass. I don't like that option because I don't like going to class. I like self-study. I do better when I teach myself stuff. Everything I know, everything I am now, everything I'm studying, including religion, formally with a university in America, I am doing these things all by myself. Coding, I'm teaching myself. Aviation, part of it I taught myself, even though I don't fly anymore. And I'm going to start flying again after med school. I taught myself many things before going to qualify myself for those things. I prefer self-study, okay? All the languages that I know, all 13 of them, it's because I sat down and I started learning the formulas to language. Mathematics, no one's teaching me mathematics. I have a textbook. I'm sitting there and doing my best. So I'm a kind of person that likes to learn things by themselves. So medicine as well, I'm learning all by myself. And in good time, when I go back to Argentina, sometime in the late 2023, I will be able to just jump into the system and start writing exams. Okay. So basically, by saying all of these things, I'm trying to tell you that the reason why Black people go there is education and tourism. Okay. Now, I mentioned football at the beginning of this video. Argentina has a dark history. Okay. Excuse the pun. Argentina has a dark history, just like Brazil has a slightly dark history. What does that mean? Brazil did not kill its Black people, but Argentina conducted a thorough genocide against its Black people. Argentina was like any other country in South America. They had slaves. So when this week, after the World Cup, when the American newspaper started attacking Argentinians on this lack of diversity issue, I saw a post on Facebook where one of these Argentinians responded and said, "Hey, in Argentina, we never had a lot of slaves. We didn't have a lot of slaves, therefore there are not a lot of people who are Black in Argentina." That's absolute rubbish. Argentina, just like Brazil, was flooded with Black people. Okay, Argentina obtained its independence from Spain because a woman, what was her name? Maria de los. I forgot her name. Actually, I'm going to look it up just now. Anyway, Maria, this Black woman, joined the Argentinian army together with other Black women and other Black men who were slaves, just like in the United States, where when the slaves were being freed during the Civil War, late in the Civil War, the slaves who escaped and the ones who escaped in the South and those who were free in the North, they joined the Union Army and they started fighting against the South. It was the same thing in Argentina. The slaves joined the ranks, the army ranks. They joined San Martin and all these other, and Simon Bolivar, all these heroes of independence of South America from Spain, which started round about Argentina. These are Black women. This Black woman fought Spain and overcame with her units, and Argentina got its independence. After the independence, she got recognized as a national hero, but the Black history thereafter started to be erased in Argentina because these slaves these people were still property of somebody's, okay? They were not just running around free to determine themselves. They were still in the slave ranks. So how slavery works or worked in Argentina is that if you wanted to free yourself, you just had to go marry someone of a different skin color. So if you were a native Indian and a slave, like the black people were slaves, what would do is a black person would marry a Native American, and they would have a child called a Thambo, and the Thambo would be free because the laws, the racist laws, did not think that all these oppressed people could marry between each other and have children that are not defined as a crime in the law of Argentina. So a lot of Argentinians mixed their blood and in order to gain freedom. But there is a genocidal aspect of it too. And so a lot of black people from Argentina, they ran away to Chile, they ran away to Uruguay. The majority ran away to Brazil because Brazil at that time was a black country. Even though Brazil had a colonial mastery that was busy, or a government that was busy handling things and oppressing people, Brazil was extremely black. And so the black people from Argentina, the ones who survived the genocide, they went to Uruguay, Chile, Paraguay, and they also went to Brazil, the majority going to Brazil. This is a part of Argentinian history that an average Argentinian young person between the ages of 12 years old and I dare say 45 years old, they have no clue of their own history. Okay? They don't know their whole history because they have been taught that somehow yellow fever decimated only the black community. That's what they're being taught. And others, like the guy who was responding on Facebook, said, well, we didn't have enough slaves to become black, etc. No, no, no. Buenos Aires and the region of La Plata, there was a massive amount of black people. Black women didn't only fight the Spanish in Argentina, black women fought the British because the British also were competing with the Spanish for the port of Buenos Aires and the port of Uruguay. Eventually, the British would conquer Uruguay and share it with the French and some Spanish. But Buenos Aires alone, the Redcoats marched in, and the Argentinian women in the region of La Boca, women of color, started boiling oil and water, and it started dousing the British army with hot water and oil, and they fought them, and the British left the port of Buenos Aires. A little bit of historic trivia. The armed forces of Argentina were formed by an Irishman. Okay, so the foundations of Argentina are not Spanish, they are Welsh, Irish, and English. The Spanish come in droves and they conquer the area, but the foundation of that society and its various agencies, they're Irish. Okay, if you know anything about the Irish regiments, they fought their way through South America in order to establish certain organizations and banks and systems of extracting wealth from South America to Europe, including what's called reserve banking. Okay, so you can double check me on this, but this is the history that I've read. The Irish fought as far as Colombia. Okay, just to give you an idea, and all the way up to Venezuela, just to give you an idea of how much Europe was competing for South America. The British were nestled in Guyana, so were the Spanish on the left side of Guyana. The Spanish then had a colony in Venezuela, and they used to go into the jungle and rape indigenous women. If you go to Guyana, if you go to the west side, you'll see the indigenous women of that area have green and blue eyes. Okay, because when the Spanish got there, they just raped from village to village. To this day, you can meet people in that area of Guyana. These are secluded communities. These communities are afraid of white people. They're afraid of white people. So they told me, because I sat with these communities and talked to them, they're afraid of white people because of the stories that have been passed down from generation to generation. As late as the 1800s, the Spanish were still doing stuff in Venezuela. Okay, so these communities are traumatized. Trauma, or what we can call generational trauma, still exists. So when they see a white person, they get a little bit afraid and uptight because they're wondering what does the white person want in the jungle this time. Okay, so there was a lot of that going on. My point of me telling you this is that the Spanish were at the top, the British were at the top by the Guyana, so were the Dutch, but the British could go all the way down the continent, um, or by ship along the coast at least, all the way down to Argentina, either on the west or the east coast. Actually, there was no Panama Canal, so it's the west coast, all right, in the Atlantic Ocean. So Argentina, fast forward to the late 1800s and early 1900s, in the 1920s, Argentina sees a migration of people from Europe in great numbers. Okay, so the only people, white people, who were in Argentina at the end of slavery, you have the Welsh, the Irish, the English, who became naturalized and became Argentinians too, and you had the Spanish descendants of the Spanish. Okay, and then in the 1920s, because Argentina is Catholic, there was an influx of Italian immigrants. The Italians would be the ones that wrestle to change the flavor of Argentina, okay, and influence the culture of Argentina to in terms of dealing with people. And then in the 1940s, another influx of Italians because of World War II, and another influx of Germans, especially because of World War II, running away from the war, and others running away from war crimes and going to Argentina where they could not be extradited. Okay. And then you have the Polish, you have Russians, you have Turks, you have um, Ukrainians. Every Eastern European nation is represented in Argentina. Okay. But the strong influence after World War II was no longer the Spanish influence, it was the Italians and the Germans. And the Italians, specifically, their influence is so great that even the accent of the Argentinians when they speak Spanish, it does not sound Spanish. It sounds like somebody speaking it is Spanish in an Italian accent. Okay, the Italians dwelt in a place called La Boca, side by side with black people. The residue of black people in in Buenos Aires. If you know anything about Italian people, they are not exactly crazy about black people, and especially so in the situation of Argentina, because these Italians were not rich. These were poor Italians who have been sent around the colonies, and they are now fighting for existence with a black people who have a history of slavery in the same neighborhoods. Okay, so they were just not fond of the black people, unfortunately, and that's the truth. Even today, when I walk in the streets of Buenos Aires, I don't go to certain neighborhoods because I know they are largely Italian and they give you funny looks on the street. Okay. So 1940s, more Germans, more Italians come to Argentina. The Germans don't hide their racism in Argentina. Um, the Italians might pretend, but it depends as well where they're from. There's a group of Italians called the porteños, which means the people who live at the port, which are these Italians that came from Italy, the poorer class of Italians. The porteños, to this day, I don't have porteño friends in Argentina because they're not a people who are engaging to people like myself. Okay. Maybe I have one or two whom I met at the church university when I was a Christian, but we don't, apart from that, I never really made any friends. I've spent a holiday in Buenos Aires just for the sake of it, not to get away from university. I spent some days having a holiday in Buenos Aires and just chilling out, visiting places. Certain areas, you'll feel the racism. People's eyes are penetrating. If they're walking behind you, they burn the back of your neck. Oh, tea. There are places in Buenos Aires where when people see a black man, they feel like they've won the jackpot. You will have more friends than you don't know what to do with. I've always been a reserved person, and they think I'm aloof. Okay, I come across as aloof because I don't just jump on people and start licking them. So they think I'm aloof. But if you are an open-minded person in Buenos Aires as a black man, you could have so much fun. But through all of this, there are going to be elements of racism. I remember walking in the street and somebody said, uh, I don't think it was Buenos Aires though. It was another city between Buenos Aires, Concepción del Uruguay, and I don't remember the third city, but I remember clearly walking on down the street, and some guy said, "No hay negros en la Argentina," which means there are no niggers in Argentina. Okay, so I was used to this expression because everywhere else I've been before that, people would look over their balcony and say, "Hey, nigger," whatever the case might be. It sounds raw in English when you say nigger. In Spanish, you could confuse it for a term of endearment, negro, but don't be fooled. It is a fantastic insult. So I've been used to that, but on that particular day, somebody just decided to confront me and said, "No hay negros en la Argentina. We don't have niggers here." So which means, what are you doing in this place? But after that, my reaction was, I've had such a fantastic time in this country so far that I don't really care what this individual has to say. Sometimes people would greet would scream from a bus or a moving vehicle and they say, "Hey, morocho." Morocho is supposedly someone who's light skinned, and I'm black. So the irony that they use for calling me morocho or whitey in English, it's actually the inverse. They mean to say darky. Okay, so there's a lot of those things going on in Argentina, and then there's a different kind of racism. Okay, a racism that is sexual in nature, where women don't really care about who you are, what your story is, and they just come up to you. "We heard that niggas have a big, is it true? Can I have some?" And there are a lot of women who are like that. They don't care for you as a person. They care about what they saw in a pornographic thing on television or maybe on the internet. Okay, so being black, they associate with you with an exaggerated manhood, and you become a sex object. Women, the same thing. A black woman in Argentina does not receive much respect. Black men can integrate easier than a black woman. A black man can date better than a black woman in Argentina. Black women are not treated very well by people. It's not just an Argentinian thing; it's a Spanish thing. Okay, Spanish people see a beautiful black woman, they're going to go say, "Oh, prostitute, how much?" Okay, because in their minds, a black woman is only a prostitute, and this comes from the slave days, where the masters, so-called masters, used to rape black women repeatedly, which is another thing that contributed to the demographic of mulattos or mestizos, the people who are mixed. Okay, so that's basically, I'm talking about Argentina today, not 1940 or 1920. So you are going to have a mixed experience in Argentina. Is Argentina fundamentally racist? I would say that the current Argentina, the current thinking is racist, but it's not an overt racism. It's cleverly woven into psychology. They make you feel unwelcome, they make you feel unwanted, and they push you out. And these are not Spanish descendants who live in Argentina. The best people to make friends with in Argentina are the ones who are descended from the Spanish. The ones who are descended from the Germans and the Italians, those are the ones who have a lot of issues with Black people. Those are the ones who come up with ways of making people feel very uncomfortable. They'll come up with stories just to make you to leave. You understand? I remember I used to live in a house in a commune. In this commune, there were male and females, and there was this one particular female with two daughters, and she made me to feel like I was looking at her daughters just because she hated the idea that she was living in a house with a black person. She became very rude towards me because she thinks because I'm a black man, I'm going to look at her daughters, right? Uh, Argentinians are flabbergasted. Their minds are blown when I tell them that in South Africa, they're white people. What's the difference between me leaving South Africa and an opportunity, if I wanted to date a white woman and go to Argentina and looking for a white woman? So the mentality is very, very backwards. They think that black people are going there to get some snowflake. Okay, I'm not one to delve into these kind of conversations or say things like that. But in this instance, where I'm telling you about Argentina, I want you to know that people's minds are slightly backwards, like 1940 backwards. It might sound harsh, but that's the way I understand Argentina to be. I don't judge them. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to be. That's their problem. I remember this one instance. Another woman, two women, another woman in the commune I lived in. She hates black people with her last breath, and she went to the police. Now, the church university that I was studying in is in a province called Entre Rios, which in English could be poetically translated to through rivers. Okay, if it was in Europe somewhere, but it's in South America, and this area is all about farming. Okay, that's where you have all the German farmers living. And I dare say I've seen some South African surnames in those farms because I used to walk the region a lot or ride to just kill time and not be in university. And I got to see uh, I got to see some names that are close to South Africa, uncannily close. And I remember this one time I was wearing a Springbok jersey, and the looks that I got from certain farming communities, it's like they could burn me if they could. All right. So it depends on where you are, who you're with. So while I'm in this town, living in this commune, T, this woman a girl really, I couldn't call her a woman. She was probably like 26, 27. She thought she had the divine authority and legal right to refer to me time and again as a filthy nigger. It's called negro de mierda, literally a shitty nigger. Sorry, a shitty nigger, literally. Negro de mierda. Now, she's one person who used to call me this out of maybe, let's work on a ratio. Out of every 100 Argentinians that I get along with, I have mutual respect with, I enjoy their culture, they enjoy asking me about mine. At every 100 of them, there's going to be 10 that's going to remind me that I'm a filthy nigger, or there are no niggers in Argentina, or morocho, or go back to Africa type people. There's always that 10%. That 10, actually, what's 10 out of, yeah, it's 10%, right? And so she calls the police and she says that she went to the police and said, I stole a bicycle. Okay. Now, I'm a foreign student. I have a foreign ID card at this time in Argentina. It's expired, but at that time I had it. So I have an ID card. I'm legally in Argentina. She goes to the police. She tells me that I had stolen a bicycle. The police come to me specifically, and they come to me and they said, "Where's the stolen bike?" And the police were ready to arrest me. And the reason why she went to the police is because she was prostituting herself for food in the commune because she didn't have food. She didn't have money to pay rent. When she came to me to prostitute herself, I had rejected her. So she cursed me every day, reminding me that I'm just a filthy nigger. She went to the police, told the police that I had stolen something. And then there was a second woman in the house who looked at me like I was a thief of some sort. Okay. Like we shared a lot of things, including a fridge, and I'd be taking out my food from the fridge and making myself food, and they'd compare their food to mine and be like, how does this nigga get all this good food or whatever? Or they look at me as if I'm the one stealing food from the fridge. Okay. So rule number one, if you're going to live in Argentina as a black person, you need to find your own place to live. Okay. So I know I talked to some of you guys about coming to Argentina to come to study because it's a fantastic place to study. I will reiterate that at the end of the video. So the rule number one, do not share living spaces with the local people unless you are married to them or unless they are really nice people who wanted to invite you over. Okay. In a situation where you are sharing space, as in like in a commune, that's a no-no because that's when the beast comes out. That's how you get to really know what the Argentinian soul and mind is thinking. Okay. So there was that case, and the police came. They didn't find the bicycle, and a Brazilian friend of mine, a white boy, Italian, was the one who stole the bicycle, but nothing happened to him. Okay. He's white, he's Italian, nothing happened to him. But he stole the bicycle and confessed to stealing the bicycle. The police didn't go after him, but the police went after me. They came to my house where I live to verify if I'm the guy ready to arrest me if the bicycle was on the premises. Okay, so this is just something I want you to keep in mind. So if you're a black man and you're coming to Argentina to study, you need to stay away from the law. Okay, don't do anything that's going to attract the law to you. If you find people who are offensive and racist, get away from them because they will go out of their way to come up with bullshit so that you can get into trouble and you can get arrested. Where does this come from? This comes from the days of slavery, where if a black man just looked at a white woman or talked to a white woman on the street, he'd be thrown in prison. Okay? This happened a lot during the Jim Crow laws in America. In Argentina, I assume in slavery. But I got a taste of it in the year 2016, 17, recently. Okay? So Argentinian racism is based on psychology. It's very subtle, but it's real and very active. You need to go there knowing that you have a strong mind and you are independent. Argentinians don't like an independent thinker. Argentinians don't like someone who makes up their own mind. It's a kind of community that thinks and does make decisions for everybody else. Don't fall into that trap. Okay. If you can't stand any form of racism, you're gonna have a hard time. Okay. But I must say that with the racism, there are 100 more opportunities for you to have a good time with good and sincere people. The racism is not going to go away because you are in the land of racism. It's not going to go away. It's there. Afro-Argentinians have had to live with this type of racism for centuries, since the 1500s. There's a handful of them left, a handful, okay? But they're still there since the days of slavery. And every day they get stopped by the police and they get asked, which country are you from? Show me ID. You look like a foreigner. It happens, okay? Because they're black and they can't do anything about it, okay? And if you walk the streets in Buenos Aires, you don't see a lot of them. You have to go to a specific place where they live, and I assume there they feel safe. You'll never see them at large in other provinces. You'll find most of them in the Buenos Aires region. Others you'll find in Santa Fe, which is a province on its own, where the university that I go to is now. And the province of Santa Fe is the only actually no, it's Tucumán, Salta. I don't know about Tucumán, but Salta and Rosario and Neuquén in the south. So far, to me, are provinces in Argentina where a black person can go and study and not be bothered. Okay? If you're going to study in Buenos Aires, yes, you'll see more Africans, but you'll come across more racism. I don't want to study in Buenos Aires. I don't want to live in Buenos Aires. I like to go for a day trip, uh, go to a restaurant I've never been to before, go around, see some touristy things to do. But beyond that, I would just never live in Buenos Aires. But I've seen Black Cubans, I've seen Haitians who are coming more and more because of the situation in Haiti, and they're studying or working. The Cubans are doctors, for an example, or they just come to stay because they don't have much freedom in Cuba in their own country. That's another thing. Cuba is not a free country. Okay, it's not free. People, Cubans are not free. Don't be fooled by this. Okay, communism does not afford anybody freedom, but in Argentina you'll find freedom. That's one of the reasons why I like Argentina. Is even though it's racist, I can find the freedom to be myself and do the things I want to do. Argentina is a productive space. Okay, so in the province of Santa Fe, where I'm studying at the moment, where the university is, it's a unique province. It's the most cosmopolitan province in Argentina by far. It's an international paradise. You've got restaurants run by Haitians. You've got Japanese. You've got Indian from the east. You've got all the traditional demographics, Italian, Spanish, whatever. Everybody gets along in Rosario. When you're walking in Rosario, you can actually breathe. In Buenos Aires, I cannot breathe, okay? But I can breathe in Rosario. In Entre Rios is where the church university was, as I mentioned, which is a province that's in the center of Argentina, where all the pastoral lands are, and that's where they raise the famous Argentinian beef, for an example. Um, I can't breathe there. I understand. I remember this one time being in the classroom and the professor picking me out from the students for a reason to make some stupid racist, what I would call racist analogy. And I remember in recent times, I was in a nursing class learning on anatomy, and the anatomy teacher would purposely skip me when she chooses who's going to answer the question, because you must remember in the Argentinian mind, they are being drummed to believe that no hay negros en la Argentina, there are no black people in Argentina. So she deliberately pretended that I wasn't there. What demographic is she? East German, not even West German. West German people have some sense in them, but East German people are holding on more to the racist ideals than, let's say, my friend from Berlin. Okay, so don't think that because you are there and nothing happens to you that racism is not there. It's there constantly, but it's very subtle. Another uh, occasion or occurrence, the same university town, the church university, same province, Entre Rios, we received a group of American students who come periodically, and they were among them were black students, and they were denied service in one of the restaurants because they were black. So this German woman says, "I do not serve niggers," and she refused to get them food. I used to frequent a restaurant that's smack bang in the front of the university gate, where we go into the gate to go to school. There's a restaurant opposite, and I used to go there because they have fantastic Wi-Fi, they got good coffee and good food. But at times there were waiters that did not want to serve me. And when I look at these waiters, these are people with Germanic roots, okay? And once I was denied service myself, but not openly. The guy just didn't want to come to my table and he didn't want to accept my money. Okay. But the restaurant owner is not racist, you understand? So you meet people who just have a problem with serving black people. In Argentina, in Entre Rios, there are places, random places to eat where people just don't feel like they are the right race to serve black people. It should be the other way around. Okay. Having said that, I want to come to this understanding with you that in Argentina, there are a lot of people who are kept ignorant on purpose through false narratives of history and false narratives of human history. Okay. Uh, I think most of the time it's not so much a foreign narrative in some cases. Sorry, an incorrect narrative in some cases. It's just the fact that they're a closed country. A closed country knows nothing about what's outside. They didn't even know much about Brazilians. I was surprised. So, as a closed people and as a closed culture previously, they didn't know much. So, when I met an Argentinian person at a restaurant or we went out or whatever, I would sit there like this because what I'm going to be doing the whole night is I'm going to be answering question after question as if I'm supposed to be educating these people about the outside world. But that's the reality of most Argentinians. Most Argentinians don't know any Black person in order to decide whether they're racist or not, whether they like this or not. They just don't know, most of them. And most of them are very welcoming people. If you stay out of religious and church circles, you will meet amazing Argentinian people. There was a time where I just said, screw this, these people are racist. But I had to be honest with myself and say, what has been my general and overall experience been? The truth is, I've had more friends in Argentina, cordial and darling people, some ignorant and rude, but I forgave them because I understand that they've been living in obscurity all their lives. Okay. Now let's look at timelines. If you went to Argentina anytime before 2014, you would have experienced an incredible amount of ignorance. If you go to Argentina today, there's been such an influx of brown and Black people and white people from other countries that the Argentinian mind is opening. Okay. I'm not saying that Argentinians have an open mind. Their minds are opening. So let's go back to that article that's haunting the Argentinians after winning the World Cup. Is Argentina racist? Okay. And my answer is yes, it is. Is Argentina dangerous for Black people? To that, I say it is not. Is Argentina a changing society? Argentina is changing faster than any society in the world that was linked to Nazism or Mussolini or any of these idiotic ideologies of the past. It is a changing country. This is great for young people to go study. I'm not young anymore, but I'm still going back to study because where else in the world could you study or get world class education for not paying a single cent? You'd be an idiot not to take advantage of it. You understand? And whatever racism, whatever is surrounding you is nothing. It's a little thing compared to what you can get and find in Argentina. For every racist slur that people speak to you, you'll have 100 more people who want to be your friend. But what we cannot deny or what we cannot not sugarcoat is that Argentina has a racist past, but it doesn't mean that Argentina has a racist future. Because as Black people, the moment we showed up in 2010, 2011, we started to educate indirectly Argentinian people, not just about Black people who use funny combs, but about the whole world as a whole. When I'm not studying in Argentina, I have weeks and days where I do voluntary work with the Department of Education in the same racist province that I lived in. And I would go to these farm schools, which were established for communities that are ex-Nazi, okay? German, very German communities. And I would go there with a teacher friend of mine from Uruguay who works in the education system, and he's Spanish descent. So he has a completely open mind. He does not espouse any racist ideals. And we work well together. So he tells me, he notifies me when, actually, there's two teachers. One is Argentinian, one is from Uruguay. And we would go to a school on a special day, and I would teach them, I would give them a class on urbanology, and I would also give them a class on geography and world history. Yes, the teachers are there to teach them, but imagine living in an exclusive community in the middle of nowhere. Your teacher is teaching you about European history or World War One. It was teaching you about Africa, but they themselves have never been to Africa or Europe. They have no idea what Brazil looks like, but they live in South America. They have no idea what Chile looks like, but they live in South America. So when I realized that this is an innocent ignorance, I started becoming part of the solution. I started teaching at the institution, at the high schools. I started putting together a curriculum, all right, which is associated with geography. Urbanology is a part of geography. And I also started teaching them life skills, how to make choices, how to envision their careers, which country do they want to move to, what are the requirements for moving to that country. So whatever they were learning in class, I brought the practical, palpable experience of it. And when I go back, I'm still going to be teaching more in my spare time. Okay. So in doing this, yes, I got a bit of education experience, valuable experience in education, but also it was a pleasure for me to do that so that I can open up a new world to the Argentinian people. Okay. Argentinian people have insecurities. White Argentinian people have insecurities about their genetic makeup, who they are, who their ancestors are. Most of them are terrified to think that maybe half of them, as white as they are, they have African blood. Now, you know African blood cannot be hidden. When someone has black in them, especially women, they tend to develop in the African way everywhere. Okay? Argentinian women have African booty. Okay? Can't hide it. It's like Brazilians. You go find a white Brazilian as white as paper, but she's got African blood because during the slave era, there was a lot of, going on. So, and other people preferred to marry white people so that they can have a mixed race child and get out of slavery. Okay. On the side of the slave masters, women of color and indigenous women and black women from Africa were fair game for people who wanted to get their rocks off. Excuse me for the crude explanation. I've been very crude in this video because I want to be absolutely honest with you. So if you're a black woman, come and study. If you're a black man, come and study in Argentina. But as a black woman, you have to take care. Don't go to a party where there are no black men. If you're a black man and in your circle there are black women and they want to go partying, you as a black man, as a brother, you have a responsibility to accompany those women to that party and make sure they are safe. Okay. So as a black woman, don't run up and down all by yourself in the first at least 2 years until you get a feeling of what the place is like. All right. So I've said a lot in this video. I'll probably have to make another one that focuses more on selections on what to study in Argentina. But I just wanted to talk about the racism thing first to give you an idea of what you'd be getting yourself into.